right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we're talking about Bones and All, the new film from Luca Guadagnino, starring Timothee Chalamet and Taylor Russell as a pair of cannibals who are in love on a road trip across the country. It's a weird one and one that I really, really liked. And we have a great conversation coming up, lots of great puzzle pieces. Joining me is Josie DeMarco, who has been in the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group, gave us some awesome puzzle pieces over the last few months that I read on the trailer episodes, and I'm happy to have her here on the show. She has a YouTube channel, which she'll tell you about during the episode. So make sure to check out her stuff, and that conversation's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or Good Pods. And of course, follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And there's the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group. Don't forget about that too. We'll be starting some trivia nights soon in there, which it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to join a group of really awesome people who love talking about movies with no trolls allowed, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces on Facebook. So with that said, let's talk about Bones and All. All right, we've got Josie DeMarco with us today. Josie, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm happy to finally have you on. We've talked about having you on over in the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group, and to talk about a weird one like Bones and All seems like a good one to dig
Absolutely.
into. There'll be a lot to talk about here for sure.
What I love about Bones and All is how empathetic it is towards people who would otherwise be viewed as monsters. And
Sure.
aesthetically, I love how it looks like a film from the 80s.
Mm.
And especially with the Reznor and Ross score only adding to that feeling. And the performances by Taylor Russell and Timothee Chalamet are excellent. They bring so much humanity and vulnerability. The screenplay is just so clever with the way it utilizes the rules of the cannibals. For that reason alone, in addition to just the humanization, it deserves a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination at the Oscars 1000%.
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that. And we'll get into it as we're getting through like pieces and stuff like that, but there is so much that I loved about this movie, and
Me too.
it's also certainly one of the most unique movies of the year. So I mean,
It
it's got
really
that
is.
going on top of everything you were just saying. It's
It
got that
really
going for
is.
it.
Like,
So, well, before we get too deep into it, it is your first time on the show. Why don't you tell my listeners a little about you and what you do?
my name is Josie DeMarco. I have my own YouTube channel, full name Josephine DeMarco, and I do movie reviews and I recite poetry that I write. And what I like to do is kind of like what David does, where I like to sort of pair newer movies and older movies
Mm.
because like show I want to bridge the gap between the old and the new to show people that, you know, the story of cinema is the same story over and over again.
It's true. It's true. A lot of these same themes are gonna just keep coming up, and the way I like to look at it is that's a good thing because it's just
It is.
storytelling. So it's some people will
Yeah.
look at it in a negative light, and I'm like, no, you're missing the point. The point is these are amazing stories, and for a filmmaker to come along and throw a little spin on it, that's an awesome place for something to start
Yes.
off.
And
So
I have and on my Instagram and TikTok, follow me on Instagram at Positive Poems, where I have poems that I write. I upload them like from TikTok.
mhm.
Uh
The one social media site that I don't spend all day on, but
I don't
I probably should.
I don't know. I don't honestly, I don't look on TikTok because I'm sorry, I don't wanna I mean, I use TikTok to, promote my writing, but I don't
Mhm.
look at other people's TikToks because I'm sorry, I don't wanna see someone's ass in my face.
Yeah, that seems to be what the majority of it is, but yeah. So, uh, yeah. On that note, let's get back to the movie. Let's talk about Bones and All. Yeah, I think, we should start this off, talking about Guadagnino. Are you a fan of his other films, Call Me by Your Name and Suspiria and everything?
Yeah, I remember liking, Suspiria and, Call Me by Your Name, I love the book so much,
Mhm.
and, the movie's a very faithful adaptation, and his scenery in his films is just gorgeous,
Mhm.
and, I have yet to see a bigger splash, but I intend to soon. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like Guadagnino. I
Yeah.
do.
I do too, I do too, and, yeah, Call Me by Your Name is fantastic, and I really like Suspiria. I mean, it's obviously it's a huge undertaking to try to remake something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that, you know,
Oh, yeah.
beloved, but, I think he puts his own stamp on it, and all the performances are so damn good in it, and,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so I was definitely looking forward to this, and
So was
it's such
I.
an interesting concept, to have this love story between cannibals. It's especially people are very, touchy nowadays when it comes to, like, you know, kinda out there concepts like this, and I was a little worried that people were not going to receive it well, like, you know, "Oh, I can't watch a movie like that," and I don't know, I feel like most people are kind of enjoying this movie for what it is.
I think because, like I was saying, because it's so, humanistic.
Mhm.
Even with, Mark Rylance's character, as sadistic as he is, you do like, there are layers to his character.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There definitely is, and, you know, our main 2 performances here, Taylor Russell and Timothee Chalamet, I mean, they're kind of our entrance into this world of cannibalism, and, you know, they're both just so damn good in it, and, you know, 2 of the best, like, young actors working
Oh,
right now.
absolutely.
I remember her in
And
Waves, and
oh,
that movie was
yeah.
so
Oh,
good,
yeah.
so it's exciting to see stuff like this happening, but there's plenty we'll have to talk about the movie along the way. Why don't we start, digging into some pieces here? What do you have for your
Okay.
first puzzle piece?
It's no surprise that my first puzzle piece is Catherine Bigelow's 1987 vampire flick, Near Dark. I made
Yeah.
this comparison in my out of the theater reaction on TikTok, and I'm not the first person to make this connection. In fact, a few people already have. In fact, I think there was one think critic who called it near dark for a generation. Both
Mhm.
the cannibals uh, in Bones and All and the vampire gangs in Near Dark live as drifting vagabonds.
Yeah.
Bill Paxton's character and Mark Rylance's character um are are both sadistic and somewhat sympathetic characters because they do terrible things, but deep down they want to be valued and accepted by others.
Yeah. They're looking for that community
Yeah,
within
exactly.
this weird
And
world.
neither vampirism nor cannibalism are depicted as lifestyles to necessarily envy in either of these films. They're essentially diseases.
Yeah.
Just as the vampires have to drink blood to survive, the eaters have to eat to survive.
Yeah.
And just as Near Dark is considered by some, I think even Catherine Bigelow herself in one of the commentaries tracks, to be an allegory of drug addiction, Bones and All has had similar interpretations.
Mm.
On the Next Best Picture podcast, Matt Neglia, Dan Bayer, and Zoe Rose Bryant, they pointed out that it could be looked at as an allegory of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s
Okay.
and like people losing someone to AIDS.
Yeah, I could see where that comparison would come up.
And I love both soundtracks to these movies. The soundtrack in Near Dark by Tangerine Dream is the perfect mix of, no pun intended, dreamy and moody. And
Mm.
most of all, both films at their core are love stories about people at lost in their lives during crossroads.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I haven't seen Near Dark since, like, I was a teenager. It's been forever, and I don't recall the score. I need to, like, go back. I need to rewatch it anyway, but I need to hear that score again because, I mean, Tangerine Dream scores are always awesome, but, I was gonna save my this first puzzle piece that I'm gonna bring up, for later, but since you're talking about a 1987 vampire movie, I guess I'll bring this one up now, and that is The Lost Boys, another
Oh,
1987 vampire
great
movie.
pick, great pick.
Yeah. Again, that setting of like Reagan era 80s, you know, and not setting it nowadays or anything like that. Setting it back then, and this kind of like underground network of these people who all find each other. In that movie, they're vampires. In this movie, they're cannibals. But they're living on the outskirts. They're underground, and obviously they're not going to fit in normal society, but they find each other and they make connections with each other and help each other out, or in some cases are dangerous to one another. And so
Yeah.
they're never feel safe, no matter who they connect with, but at the same time, they need to have something to connect with. And so both of these movies really seem to have that. And like you were just saying with Near Dark, I think it fits with all three of them.
And what you're saying, and back to the community thing, another thing that what Armor Lost Boys, Near Dark, have that Bone Saw has too, is there's like sort of like a hierarchy of
Hmm.
vampires and cannibals.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I guess you would imagine if something like this happened in the real world, that somebody would take charge. So
I
I
mean, like,
I guess it would
they're
happen.
like what Michael Stuhlbarg saying, um, there's before Bones and all, and there's after Bones and all, kinda like
Yeah.
you're not a true cannibal until Bones and all.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Michael Stuhlbarg, my favorite,
I
maybe
know.
maybe maybe my favorite performance of the year.
You
Like
know,
that
I was
that's how good he is
wondering
in
you know,
this.
I was wondering, like, if somebody like, if someone did what if someone choked on a bone?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's why they all need friends. Like they need someone to help them out when that happens. But yeah, seriously, I don't see I don't see how that could possibly work. But in the movie, it works, I guess.
Or
So
like, Mama Cass, Mamas and the Papas, but, like, choked on a hamburger, choked on a human burger.
there you go. There you go. That sounds like a way to go for sure. But what do you have for your next puzzle piece?
My next puzzle piece is I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay, directed by Park Chan-wook.
Okay.
Um, so it, um on in the film, a girl named Cha Young has a delusion that she's a cyborg and she's institutionalized. Um, and she starves herself. She speaks to inanimate objects. She also has this bad habit of physically harming herself. Mental illness seems to run in Cha Young's family, for her grandmother, whom she was very close with, had a delusion she was a mouse. And a lot of her problems stem from losing the grandmother she was so close with. Cha Young even keeps her grandmother's dentures. And at
Mm,
the mental hospital, Cha Young meets a schizophrenic kleptomaniac patient named Il Sun. He has a delusion that he could steal other people's souls. The two fall in love. It's a charming love story with very funny surrealist elements. Someone on Letterboxd described it as a South Korean version of Amelie set in a psychiatric ward.
there you go. There's some
The
puzzle pieces.
fantasies these characters have in their psychotic minds are quite hilarious, and this is the most colorful, eye-popping production design I've ever seen of a movie set in a mental hospital. Seriously, the color palette is insane. Like Bones and all, the lovers in Cyborg bond over what makes them misunderstood outcasts in society, which is their mental illness. And there's a hill shot in I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay, that's very similar to the hill shot in Bones and all.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, like finding connections with someone who is equally considered like inhuman.
yeah. Absolutely. I've never actually seen that movie, but it sounds fantastic. And
It's not streaming anywhere, but try to see if it's at a library.
yeah, I mean, his movies are
See, this is why
great.
physical media is important.
Yeah, exactly. That is why they're important. So yeah, I'm gonna have to check that one out.
All right, what's your next piece?
My next piece, I am gonna go with something I just watched for the first time yesterday, specifically for this podcast because I had seen so many people mention it as something that is most likely a big influence on this film, and that's Terrence Malick's Badlands, which
It's a good one.
I had never seen, and honestly is one of the best movies I've ever seen. Like
It's
that's how much I
it's
loved it.
gorgeous.
It's
I
incredible.
mean, it's such a great debut.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that that was his first movie is ridiculous, and, like, it's not just the cinematography and, like, those amazing shots, but, like, The story is fantastic. The dialogue is incredible. It's so original and so unique, even though, you could certainly draw a line back to like a Bonnie and Clyde type thing or something
Yeah,
like that.
and it is inspired from a true story.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Which, of course, Bones and All is not. I
Yeah.
mean, there's Army Hammer, but that's not, that's not,
No,
neither here nor there.
that's just I think that's just pure coincidence.
Yes, I think so too.
But
Yeah,
but the performances from Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen are
yeah,
wonderful, and
so good.
fun fact, Sissy Spacek's husband was a production designer on that movie.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
There you go. That's pretty cool. But, yeah, I think you could just draw, like, a straight line, from that to here, and, it 2 incredible, very unique love stories that are just out there.
and both have landscape cinematography.
Yes, definitely.
This isn't a puzzle piece, but, I wonder if Luca Guadagnino was in any way influenced by Wim Wenders when
Oh,
making
sure.
this,
Yeah.
because, like Paris, Texas,
Mhm.
the and that involves drifters, and they're I've yet to see it, but Kings of the Road.
Mm. Yeah, Paris, Texas did come to mind for me actually because of some of those
No
shots and
way!
stuff like that. Yeah, I didn't include it on my
I
list
didn't
either.
either because the
Yeah.
plot-wise, it's obviously very different, but it's just stylistically.
If we both thought about it, I'm putting it on the official list, but, we won't include it in the main
No.
conversation, but yeah, that's funny that we both thought of it, but didn't actually include it, so
Okay.
that's cool. What do you got next, though?
My next piece is actually a short story by
Mhm.
Mark Twain called
Okay.
Cannibalism in the Cars. And
Okay.
it's a frame narrative with two men on a train, and one of them is a congressman. He tells a story of about being stuck on a train during a major snowstorm. He talks about he and his fellow congressmen resorted to cannibalism for survival, and they did it by holding elections for candidates to eat. And it has a signature Mark Twain satirical wit. Cannibalism is a metaphor here as well, but in a different context. Uh, though it's more so about socioeconomic structures and class struggle.
Mm.
Though you can make that argument with Bones and All, since it takes place during the Reagan era,
Yeah.
and there does seem to be in some scenes of Bones and All some comment socioeconomic commentary, like with I guess I don't. It's not. I wouldn't call it a full rating of the store,
Mhm.
but you get what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and, like, people are desperate, basically,
Yeah,
and yeah. It's interesting, I find that, 'cause I don't know anything about that story, but I find it really interesting, you bringing that one up because, like I was saying earlier at the beginning of the conversation that I was worried that people would, like, maybe reject a story about cannibalism, but cannibalism is a metaphor, I mean, why not? Like, it's in so
yeah.
many
I mean,
things.
and I think the reason why we're seeing it as a trend in films today, there's a reason for it.
Mhm.
Because if you look at the history of socioeconomics, people feed off of each other.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that we are heading towards more of that, I feel like, but that's another, conversation for another time, but,
Yeah.
yeah, things are, a little bleak though, but, at least we have good movies, so,
Yeah.
I I'll go to my next piece, and I had said that you could draw a line, from Badlands to Bones and All. I think, you would maybe take a detour along that line for 1994's Natural Born Killers.
I still haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, I think I didn't even really like it that much back when it came out. I thought it was like, I get it, like that's kind of where I went with it. I rewatched it a couple years ago and I really loved it. I thought the satirical elements of it just really stood out as, these two people who are just so starved for attention and for fame, and this is the way they go about getting it. And that is definitely not what Bones and All is. Bones and All is more
I
of just
think
a
that's why I mean, I haven't seen Natural Born Killers yet, but
Mhm.
I know it's a lovers on the run movie like Badlands, but
Sure.
I didn't watch it for this because it would because, like, I know it's a little bit about, like, fame and fortune. That's not what Bones and All is about. So I decided not to.
Yeah, there's definitely, things where it's got different, sights in mind with what it's going after with the story, but still the mix of a love story and violence, I felt it does deserve a little bit of a place here on the list.
And because they're on the run, maybe the travel aspect.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, I definitely think it feels like a more vital film now with the way, with social media and people's, like, constant craving of attention and validation, it definitely feels like a better movie to watch now.
Yeah, they can't, like, feel like they're human unless they're, like, a validated human being unless they have,
Yeah.
the approval for social media, but that ironically makes you a robot.
Yeah, basically,
Well,
basically.
I still have yet to watch Natural Born Killers, but I'll keep that in mind when watching it.
Awesome. What do you got for your next piece?
My next piece, okay, I know this is Bones and All is definitely not as whimsical as this film I'm about to mention,
Mhm.
but if you're talking lovers on the run and in, like, the natural setting, like, the outdoors, I'm talking about Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom.
Nice, alright.
They're both coming of age stories about lovers on the run. They both feature characters who are outcasts in their worlds. They're misunderstood. And like I'm a cyborg, but that's okay. It touches on mental illness. And as we mentioned earlier, cannibalism is Marin and Lee's disease. And in
Mhm.
both films, the lovers are most free when they're outside in the wilderness.
Absolutely. They both also share that, w 2 people who can't possibly get anything from their families or from they don't really
Yes,
have families, friends, anything, it's
I thought about that too.
yeah, it's only each
Dysfunctional
other.
families.
Yeah, they only can get any kind of support or love or anything from each other, and so that just makes for such a bigger love story, So I think that that's a
Yeah.
great one, and also I would love to see Wes Anderson hasn't done anything, like, in the world of, like, horror or horror adjacent, and I
He
would love to see
he
that.
is a really big fan of Rosemary's Baby.
Okay, so maybe we'll get it eventually. I mean, I think that it would be a really interesting direction for him to take
Well,
with a future project.
even if it's not like a full-on horror movie, but like Halloween themed,
Mhm.
like maybe if it involved like witches or wizards.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I could see that.
All right, what's
Uh,
your next piece?
I will go with a movie that I have said many times on the show that I don't like, but I know a lot of other people do like it. And I'm gonna go with Doctor Sleep, the Mike Flanagan Stephen King
I
sequel.
haven't seen Doctor Sleep, but my brother doesn't like it.
Your brother, I agree with your brother. But the main villain of the movie is Rebecca Ferguson's character, Rose the Hat. And her performance reminds me a lot of what Mark Rylance is doing here with his character Sully. He's just this like weird on the outskirts, kind of creepy, vaguely threatening presence until he eventually actually is very, threatening and evil. But the whole time building up, you're like not quite sure what is this person trying to do, and they just keep popping up along the way. And the way that the two of them kind of approach their characters, I feel there's a pretty big comparison I think that could be made between Rose the Hat and Sully.
Yeah. I haven't seen Doctor Sleep, but my brother, I remember him saying he did not like it. And then one of my friends said that even though they were not a fan of the movie, they liked Rebecca Ferguson's performance a lot.
I think she's the best part of the movie for sure. And yeah.
Okay, so my next piece is another Lovers on the Run film, David Lynch's Wild at Heart.
Okay. This is actually a David Lynch film that I haven't seen yet.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
a good one. Um, of course, it's the story of Sailor, played by Nick Cage, and played by Laura Dern. Sailor returns from prison after killing in a self-defense situation. He and Lula reunite. Lula's mother, played by Diane Ladd, who's Laura Dern's real-life mother, assigns a hitman with some other odd folks to kill Sailor because she does not approve of their union. And just like how Mark Rylance is a maniac in Bones and All, calling Willem Dafoe's character a psycho uh, is an understatement. He plays his character named Bobby Peru, and he's
I
got
think
like,
that could be said for most Willem Dafoe roles, but you know.
yeah, yeah. He reminds me of Mark Rylance's character.
Yeah.
They're both crazy in different ways, but both characters stand out visually. Mark Rylance with the ponytail,
Uh-huh.
and Willem Dafoe with the weird Jaws-like teeth.
Oh boy.
Um,
What a
I want
fantastic cast.
I want you to watch Wild at Heart, and then let me know what you think, especially of Willem Dafoe's teeth.
Oh, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Yeah, that is like seriously such a great cast. I though all those people, I cannot believe I've never seen it, but I'm going to watch
Yeah,
it and I cannot wait for those
it was
teeth.
a Palme d'Or winner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
one of those movies, kind of like Badlands, like I said, I just watched for the first time. One of those movies, it's always been on my list. I just never got around to it.
yeah, and out of all the Lovers on the Run movies, I chose this. In addition to Moonrise Kingdom, I chose this one because both this and Bones and All sort of take place in heightened realities.
Mm, yeah.
And both couples try to live the best they can under the most hellish circumstances.
Hmm.
Whether they can actually physically survive in these worlds is a question for another day.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, because it's so beautifully shot that it feels like our world, but at the same time, like there's roving gangs of cannibals. Like it's definitely
Yeah,
heightens. So.
yeah,
Well, I will go with my final puzzle piece, which we've already talked about vampires on this, but I felt like I needed to include the Twilight series on my puzzle piece list. These are very pretty people, and they're very deeply in love, and they are maybe not supernatural vampires, but they're not too far off, like we've discussed with some of our other puzzle pieces, and so I felt like it really fits, and just like the metaphor of just how deeply and how difficult it can be to be in love when you're young. I think that is something
sure.
that is what Twilight's all about, really, and that is something that is captured here as well in Bones and All.
And you can also make that connection with Let the Right One In.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about Let the Right One In too while making my list. I didn't include it, but definitely you can include that there as well.
You know what's funny? Before Twilight, or like before Twilight came out, or like around time Twilight came out, I wondered, could vampires get AIDS? But I didn't realize that,
Yeah.
they're already dead.
Yeah, they're already dead, so I guess they don't have to worry about it. So.
Um,
So you have
and
one more piece?
yeah, and it's actually a poem by
Okay.
Edna St. Vincent Millay, and the themes of this poem are similar to the film. It's called "Love Is Not All." It is not meat nor drink. Okay, that's the first line. Love
Okay.
is not all. It is not meat nor drink, nor slumber nor a roof against the rain, nor yet a floating spar to men that sink and rise and sink and rise and sink again. Love cannot fill the thickened lung with breath, nor clean the blood, nor set the fractured bone. Yet many a man is making friends with death, even as I speak, for lack of love alone. It well may be that in a different hour, pinned down by pain and moaning for release, or nagged by want past resolution's power, it might be driven to sell your love for peeps, or trade the memory of this night for food. It well may be, I do not think I would.
Hmm. Now I can absolutely see the combination of elements in there that would draw you to include that as a piece here. I like that a lot. That is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a literary background, so
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I like that. That's a great piece to go out on. That is a great place for us to wrap it up. I will read down our list of puzzle pieces here for the finished puzzle. We talked about Near Dark, The Lost Boys, I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay, Badlands. We threw Paris, Texas in there. Cannibalism in the Cars, Natural Born Killers, Moonrise Kingdom, Doctor Sleep, Wild at Heart, Twilight. We included Let the Right One In, and then Love Is Not All, which, like I said, a really interesting way to tie that all up, and a really interesting
Yeah,
list of puzzle pieces here. A lot of lovers on the run, of course.
this was a lot of fun doing this with you. We should do this again.
Yeah, I would love to. Do you have any, like, closing thoughts on Bones and All? Anything we didn't quite get to while going through puzzle pieces?
Um, yeah. So as far as like what the cannibalism is a metaphor for,
Mhm,
um, it it could be a metaphor for wanting to fill a place
mhm,
within one's soul, feeling lost, feel the hunger for something more
mhm.
out of life.
Sure. I feel like it could be that, but it could be so many things, and that's part of
Right? And that's
part
it's you can write a whole list of what the cannibalism could be an allegory for.
yeah, and I think that that's some of the most exciting things in a movie is when, you really don't have that clear answer, and there are a lot of things that you can kind of fill in the blank there with, and they all feel right, and they all feel fully realized, and that's part of what I think
Yeah.
makes this movie so successful. But also, kinda to take it back to the puzzle pieces, we talked about, Badlands and Natural Born Killers, we talked about things like you were talking about Wild at Heart, or then like going into things like Near Dark and The Lost Boys. It it's such a wide range of things, but it doesn't feel like any of them necessarily. It's got so many of its own things to say about some of those same themes, and that's it's a really interesting film for sure. I really like that about it. One other thing I was gonna mention, and not really as a puzzle piece necessarily, but, the Trent Reznor Atticus Ross score, the closest thing I think I've heard out of Trent Reznor in one of his film score works to a Nine Inch Nails album. Like, it felt like it could have been some of the more atmospheric tracks on the Downward Spiral or something like that.
Oh, you know what movie I thought of too while watching? Don't
Hmm.
because of the '80s and particularly one scene, I thought of Adventureland.
Oh, I love Adventureland. That movie
Me
absolutely
too.
rules. Yeah, so much fun. A lot more, upbeat, I would say, but, certainly the '80s, the '80s, and I could see, like, if these 2, didn't meet the end they do, I could see them, like, ending up at some, like, fun jobs or something and making friends like in Adventureland, you
You
know?
know, I have a theory that I mean, they don't show her eating him,
Mhm.
but like I have a theory like that she doesn't I mean, it's implied that most likely implied that she does, but
Yeah.
it I have a theory that she may not have all gone through with it
Yeah.
and she just couldn't. And that next shot on the hill is them continuing living life as drifters. And
That's how a good love story should end, right?
yeah, but even as drifters, there's a lot of complications to that. And like who's to say that other cannibals couldn't hunt them down and try to eat them?
Yeah. I mean, Stahlberg's still out there, so
Yeah, that's true.
with those creepy
Yeah,
eyes.
yeah. I would be I'd be afraid of him.
Yeah, definitely. That yeah,
And David
that's the
Gordon Green
scariest.
for that matter.
And David Gordon Green, absolutely, looking like a good, Outback hick. He really rocked
Yeah,
that role for sure, so
yeah, like, I don't wanna, like, sound stereotypical, but it's almost like they were kinda poking fun of this is I just had this thought. This takes place in the Reagan era.
Mhm,
What if, like I don't know if this was Guadagnino and the screenwriter I can't pronounce his last name,
mhm,
David Kajganich, whatever,
yeah.
but I wonder if they were trying to sort of poke fun at, like, rednecks or hicks in that
Mhm.
time period.
Yeah, yeah, very possibly. I mean, because, there's a time before cell phones and everything where, like, you get lost in those woods, like, shit's scary, you
You
know?
know, and you bring up cell phones. Someone Ryan Verrill from The Disconnected, I think he said that, all he believes that, like, most horror movies should, if not all, should take place in the past because if it's set in the present things are more convenient and then, you know.
Yeah, you can get out of any situation a lot easier nowadays, so that makes a lot of sense. I I think that's a good place to wrap up Bones and
That's
All.
a great place to end.
Definitely. Is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yes, my mom and I just finished watching Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio,
Oh, yeah.
and I absolutely loved it. And I also recently watched on the Sight and Sound Top 100 Sunrise, A Song of Two Lovers. That was brilliant.
Okay. Right on. Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I did, watch, Del Toro's Pinocchio, and I loved it, and, we actually have an episode coming up soon.
My mom and I were tearing.
Oh, it's so good. So much fun. Well, right on. Josie, tell people where they could find you and your YouTube channel and all that.
Well, my full name is Josephine DeMarco on YouTube, just my full name. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Josie Poetess. And you can follow me on TikTok at Josie Film and Lit.
Great. Well, like we said earlier, this was a lot of fun, and definitely I would love to get you back on again sometime.
Great.
That's Serena over there.
And that's Naomi, and we are the hosts of Weird Mythic Podcast.
Yes, we are. Our show, Weird Mythic, covers stories about cryptids, which is what brought us together to create the show. But we also like to talk about anything paranormal and strange that happens in the world.
We post episodes every Sunday on different topics, and we would love to have more listeners. We're on all podcast platforms, and you can find us on all social media sites as well. Give us a listen, send us some personal stories to share on the show, and we will love you forever.
Yes, we will. We would love some personal stories, some cryptid encounters, and we hope that you listen and tune into the show.
You can listen to Weird Mythic Podcasts wherever you get your podcast fix.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Bones and All. Thank you to Josie for joining me on that one. And thank you to all you for listening. If you're enjoying what we do here on Piecing It Together, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And we'd really appreciate your 5-star ratings if you could take a minute out and do that, whether that's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Good Pods, Podchaser. If there's a 5-star button, maybe even type a little review. I would really appreciate that. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And don't forget about our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together. I currently have an episode on Black Adam, an episode on Strange World, and one on Broker. And I might have one or two others in there. Also, a preview of my new album is in there, which, by the way, my new album, More Content, on pre-order right now. The album comes out December 30th. It's awesome, guys. I'm so excited to finally have this thing out, and I've started shipping copies to people who have ordered copies. You can order them on Bandcamp, davidrosen.bandcamp.com. The album will be streaming on December 30th, and I will be posting on December 30th a commentary track of the album here on Piecing It Together, so you can hear it and hear some background stories on the album. But yeah, I'm really excited for everyone to hear it. So that is coming soon. Check out the Patreon. It's produced by David Rosen. Patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Lots of great content from Piecing It Together, awesome movie year, and from my music career. And while I do have the new album coming out, I wanted to play a track not from that album, but one that I thought would be a really good fit for Bones and All. I've played this before. It's been a while, I think. It's called A Stranger, and this song is from my album An Unseen Sky. And I've always loved this song, and I feel like this one would fit the vibe of Bones and All. So we'll go out with A Stranger. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.